Alright, you guys, I am in the background. I'm just kind of getting things ready, as I usually do. I have a little bit of a cold. I think I'm coming to the end of it, but it's okay. It's not too terrible.
Line in mode.
All right. Hello, everyone. It is Venus Brown. I am back for another live read of Margaret Atwood's book, The Testaments. This is the very end. There is only one more chapter left, and then the Symposium section and Acknowledgments at the very end, and that's it. After that, I'm not too sure. I do want to keep reading stuff. I just don't know exactly what I'm going to read. Most of my physical books are actually packed away right now, but I do have this this book called Princesses Behaving Badly that I keep by my bedside, and sometimes I read a little bit of it, but I haven't managed to get all the way through it. And I was thinking that might be something that I could go ahead and start reading, and it would incentivize me to actually get all the way through it. Anyway, I am a little bit under the weather. I think we went on a trip to Ireland, and we took a little 2-day excursion over to Scotland. And the last 2 days in our trip to Ireland, I got sick. My kid actually got sick a couple days before that. But most of what we were doing at the end of the trip was kind of walking and sightseeing, and they do not like that kind of stuff. They don't particularly care for the whole sightseeing thing and walking all over the place. So they were okay with just staying in the room most of the time. But yeah, we went to all sorts of places in Ireland. It was fun. It was beautiful. It was a great break from everything. And then we spent a couple days in Scotland. I was gonna take the ferry over to Scotland, but then after a while I was like, it's gonna take so long just to get the bus up to the ferry and then take the ferry and then get another bus or train over to Edinburgh. So we decided to fly from Dublin to Edinburgh and then back from Edinburgh into Belfast. So that's how we did that part. Our last part of the trip was to Londonderry, which I've been very much looking forward to. If you don't know, Londonderry is a very important part of what happened with Bloody Sunday. If you've ever heard of Bloody Sunday, not the American Bloody Sunday, the Bloody Sunday in Ireland. Which involved a lot of protests, a lot of protests. But it also, unfortunately, involved a lot of the, we'll say the police and the military, things like that, in Northern Ireland, cracking down in a way that they should not have, that involved a lot of death. And a lot of these kids that were protesting were quite young, so that's, to me, even worse. Like, they're killing these kids. And a lot of it was based on, they would make claims that there's rioting. They would make claims that there's all this awful violent stuff going on, when actually a lot of it was being started by them. So that freaking sucks. That's crap. But it is not unusual. I've heard of plenty of protests and things like that in America where that has happened. The police, the journalists come out and say, "Oh, there's all this rioting. It's so terrible." And then you look deeper into it and you find out, or you hear from people on the ground that are in the middle of it, that this was not a violent protest, that this was a peaceful protest until the police came in and started throwing tear gas and shooting rubber bullets and shit like that. And yeah, it really sucks. Anyway, let's stop that. Enough of that. I'm going to go ahead and start with the reading. We have one more chapter, chapter 71. Let's see here. Get this ready. I believe it's on page 354. Okay, yeah. All right, so let's go to the reading section. This is part, 27? Sendoff? I believe that's the correct numeral, Roman numeral. Sendoff. This is the last. This is the end. After this, there is no more of this book. Very sad. All right. The Ardua Hall Holograph. Chapter 71. Our time together is drawing short, my reader. Possibly you will view these pages of mine as a fragile treasure box to be opened with the utmost care. Possibly you will tear them apart or burn them. That often happens to words. Perhaps you'll be a student of history, in which case I hope you'll make something useful of me. A warts and all portrait, a definitive account of my life and times, suitably footnoted. Though, if you don't accuse me of bad faith, I will be astonished. Or, in fact, not astonished. I will be dead, and the dead are hard to astonish. Some of the stuff that Lydia says, I know she's a fictional character, but some of the stuff she says just cracks me up. Anyway, I picture you as a young woman, bright, ambitious. You'll be looking to make a niche for yourself in whatever dim, echoing caverns of academia may still exist by your time. I situate you at your desk, your hair tucked back behind your ears, your nail polish chipped, for nail polish will have returned. It always does. You're frowning slightly, a habit that will increase as you age, I agree. I hover behind you, peering over your shoulder, your muse, your unseen inspiration, urging you on. So the comment about frowning more as you age, like, I remember when I was younger thinking that some of these older people that get all crotchety and upset about young people and all this stuff are so ridiculous. And now I am older, and I swear, like, everything sets me off so easily. It's so easy to look at things in kind of a just sour temperament. And I try not to do that all the time, but I'm telling you, this aging thing is not fun. It gets you. It really does. Not just the mood and temperament, but the body aches and the, like, multiple things going wrong with your body that maybe you didn't expect when you were younger. It's something. Anyway, let's continue on. You'll labor over this manuscript of mine, reading and rereading, picking nits as you go, developing the fascinated but also bored hatred biographers so often come to feel for their subjects. How can I have behaved so badly, so cruelly, so stupidly, you will ask. You yourself would never have done such things, but you yourself will never have had to. And I think that's an important distinguishment. Some of the fans of the stories and the movie or shows that I know got very, very irritated and upset about how June was, both in the book and on the show, but especially on the show. And it's like, she is doing a lot of awful stuff, but consider the situation. Consider the predicaments that she was in. Consider the freaking trauma that had built over those years of abuse and trauma in that situation that she could not get out of. And then when she could get out of, she was like trying not to because she was so worried about leaving her daughter in the middle of this. So just considering all that, yeah, you might think that you wouldn't behave that way. You might think that you would be better or that you would do better. But you don't know because you have not been in that situation. Even if you've been in some situation like this, you're not in her shoes. You're not in her specific situation. Everybody reacts to trauma in their own way. They all deal with the events that happen in their lives in their own way. And some of them are similar, some of them are not. You can't say for sure what you would do in a situation like this. Anyway, let's move on. And so we come to my end. It's late. Too late for Gilead to prevent its coming destruction. I'm sorry I won't live to see it. The conflagration, the downfall, and it's late in my life. And it's late at night, a cloudless night, as I observed while walking here. The full moon is out, casting her equivocal corpse glow over all. 3 eyes saluted me as I passed them. In moonlight, their faces were skulls, as mine must have been to them. They will come too late, the eyes. My messengers have flown. When worst comes to worst, as it will very soon, I'll make a quick exit. Yeah, I didn't remember the whole totality of the end of the book, but I have a feeling it's coming to something dreadful. A needleful or 2 of morphine will do it. Best that way. If I allowed myself to live, I would disgorge too much truth. Torture is like dancing. I'm too old for it. Let the younger ones practice their bravery, though they may not have a choice about that, since they lack my privileges. But now I must end our conversation. Goodbye, my reader. Try not to think too badly of me, or no more badly than I think of myself. In a moment, I'll slot these pages into Cardinal Newman and slide it back onto my shelf. In my end is my beginning, as someone once said. Who was that? Mary, Queen of Scots? If history does not lie, but we know history often does, at least a little bit. Her motto, with a phoenix rising from its ashes, embroidered on a wall hanging. Such excellent embroiders women are. The footsteps approach, one boot after another, between one breath and the next, the knock will come. So that's it. That was the last chapter. Now, I don't remember if I read the 13th Symposium and the afterword and stuff like that at the beginning, because I know I read a bunch of extra stuff when I first started this reading selection. So I don't remember if this was part of what I read. But I am reading it now, so let's go ahead and get on with it. The 13th Symposium. Let's see if I can make sure this is... Yeah, that's good. All right. Historical notes. Being a partial transcript of the proceedings of the 13th Symposium on Galadian Studies, International Historical Association Convention, Passamaquoddy, Maine, June 29th to 30th, 2197. 2197. Chair, Professor Mary Ann Crescent Moon, President, Anishinaabe, I think, maybe, University, Cobalt, Ontario. Keynote speaker, Professor James Darcy Piexoto, Director, 20th and 21st Century Archives, Cambridge University, England. All right, let me get a little bit of water. Crescent Moon. First, I would like to acknowledge that this event is taking place on the traditional territory of the Penobscot Nation, and I thank the elders and ancestors for permitting our presence here today. I would also like to point out that our location, Passamaquoddy, formerly Bangor, was not only a crucial jumping-off point for refugees fleeing Gilead, but was also a key hub of the Underground Railroad in antebellum times. Now, more than 300 years ago, as they say, history does not repeat itself, but it rhymes. What a pleasure to welcome you all here to the 13th Symposium on Galadian Studies. How our organization has grown, and with such good reason. We must continue to remind ourselves of the wrong turnings taken in the past, so we do not repeat them. A little housekeeping. For those who would like some Penobscot River fishing, there are 2 excursions planned. Please remember your sunscreen and insect repellent. Details of these expeditions and of the Galadian period town architectural tour are in your symposium files. We have added a recreational Gilead period hymn sing at the Church of St. Jude in company with 3 of the town's school choirs. Tomorrow is period costume reenactment day. For those who have come equipped, I do ask you not to get carried away, as happened at the 10th Symposium. Now please, welcome a speaker familiar to us all, both from his written publications and from his recent fascinating television series, Inside Gilead, Daily Life in a Puritan Theocracy. His presentation of objects from museum collections around the world, especially the handcrafted textile items, has been truly spellbinding. I give you Professor Piexoto. All right. Now, just so you know, if you have not listened to any of these symposiums, Professor Piexoto can be a bit much. He, we'll just say that the advancements that came after Gilead fell may not feel all that much more advanced from where we were 5 years ago. And I say where we were 5 years ago because it feels like things have gone backwards in the last 5 or 10 years. So we'll just say 5 years ago, maybe we were at a point where I thought things were going to get better, and instead they got worse. Anyway, there are things that you should notice in this reading that maybe do not sound like they have learned a whole hell of a lot. Maybe they've learned a decent amount from Gilead, but haven't seemed to learn a lot from whatever progression has happened since then. Thank you, Professor Crescent Moon, or should I say, Madam President. We all congratulate you on your promotion, a thing that would never have happened in Gilead. Applause, applause. Now that women are usurping leadership positions to such a terrifying extent, I hope you will not be too severe on me. I did take to heart your comments about my little jokes at the 12th Symposium. I admit some of them were not in the best of taste, and I will attempt not to re-offend. Modified applause. It's gratifying to see such a large turnout. Who would have thought that the Galadian studies, neglected for so many decades, would suddenly have gained so greatly in popularity? Those of us who have labored in the dim and obscure corners of academia for so long are not used to the bewildering glare of the limelight. Laughter. Right, okay. That's so funny. You will all remember the excitement of a few years ago when a footlocker containing the collection of tapes attributed to the Galadian handmaid known as Alfred was discovered. That find was made right here in Passamaquoddy, behind a false wall. Our investigations and our tentative conclusions were presented at our last symposium and have already given rise to an impressive number of peer-reviewed papers. To those who have questioned the materials and its dating, I can now say with assurance that half a dozen independent studies have verified our first assumptions, though I must qualify that somewhat. The digital black hole of the 21st century that caused so much information to vanish due to rapid decay rate of stored data, coupled with the sabotage of a large number of server farms and libraries by agents from Gilead bent on destroying any records that might conflict with their own, as well as their populist revolts against repressive digital surveillance in many countries, means that it has not been possible to date many Galadian materials precisely. A margin of error of between 10 and 30 years must be assumed. Within that range, however, we are as confident as any historian could usually be. Laughter. So, what was I gonna say? This thing about the digital black hole. It is something that I sometimes wonder about, that we've become so dependent on saving everything to the digital cloud and saving everything electronically and all of that. And I remember going through school and it was always, oh, you need to keep hard copies, you need to keep digital copies, like keep 4 copies of everything, which I felt was a little excessive, but it usually meant that I had something available in case the system crashed, I lost most of my stuff and whatever. But yeah, I would wonder about that. And when you have a regime like the Gilead Society, like intentionally taking this shit down, intentionally demolishing it and removing it. Or like here in Florida, where you have all these people intentionally trying to get literature removed from libraries and literature removed from book reading and things like that in both grade school and in college. Like, these people came in trying to claim that they were trying to save the children by allowing all these banned books for kids in elementary school. But then they started fucking pushing the exact same shit in the colleges and started putting in these laws for our freaking colleges. So are you really saving children, or are you just pushing your fucking political agenda? Because they claim they're removing these books because they push a political agenda. But as far as I see it, removing all those books is pushing your own political agenda. But anyway, and I know some people don't like my political discussions, but it is part of who I am. I will always most likely talk a little bit about politics, while some people think it's unsavory or boring or whatever. To me, it is part of life. It is part of the current events that go on in our societies, in our country, in our states, and the stuff that happens because of politics does affect our lives. Some of it a lot more loosely than others, but some of it has real, like, negative consequences and positive consequences in your lives directly. So to me, it's important. Anyway, let's continue on. Where was I? Okay, so yeah, we read the thing about the digital issue, which does concern me a little bit. These fucking data farms also concern me, as they should everyone. Another issue that can have a huge freaking consequence on all our lives. Margin of error between 10 and 30. Yeah, okay. All right, so since the discovery of those momentous tapes, there have been two other spectacular finds, which, if authentic, will add substantially to our understanding of this long gone period in our collective history. First, the manuscripts known as the Ardua Hall holograph. This series of handwritten pages was discovered inside a 19th century edition of Cardinal Newman's Apologia Pro Vita Sua. I don't know if that's right, Sua or Swa, I don't know. The book was purchased at a general auction by J. Grimsby Dodge, lately of Cambridge, Massachusetts. His nephew inherited the collection and sold it to a dealer in antiques who recognized its potential. Thus, it was brought to our attention. Here is a slide of the first page. The handwriting is legible to those trained in archaic cursive. The pages have been trimmed to fit within the excavation in the Cardinal Newman text. The carbon dating of the paper does not exclude the late Gilead period, and the ink used in the first pages is a standard drawing ink of the period, black in color, though after a certain number of pages, blue is employed. Writing was forbidden for women and girls with the exception of the aunts, but drawing was taught at schools to the daughters of elite families. So a supply of such inks was available. The Ardua Hall holograph claims to have been composed by a certain Aunt Lydia, who features somewhat unflatteringly in the series of tapes discovered in the footlocker. Internal evidence suggests that she may also have been the Aunt Lydia, identified by archaeologists as the main subject of a large and clumsily executed statue discovered in an abandoned chicken battery farm 70 years after the fall of Gilead. The nose of the central figure had broken off, and one of the figures was headless, suggesting vandalism. Here is a slide of it. I apologize for the lighting. I took this picture myself, and I am not the world's best photographer. Budgetary constraints preclude my hiring a professional. Laughter. Ha 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 ha. Yeah. Anyway, the Lydia personage is referenced in several debriefings of deep cover Mayday agents as having been both ruthless and cunning. We have been unable to find her in the scant amount of televised material surviving from the period through a framed photograph with Aunt Lydia. Handwritten on the back was unearthed from the rubble of a girls' school bombed during the collapse of Gilead. Much points to the same, Aunt Lydia, as our holograph author. But as always, we must be cautious. Suppose the manuscript is a forgery, not a clumsy attempt made in our own times to defraud. The paper and ink would quickly expose such a deception. But a forgery from within Gilead itself. Indeed, from within Ardua Hall. What if our manuscript was devised as a trap, meant to frame its object like the casket letters used to bring about the death of Mary, Queen of Scots? Could it be that one of Aunt Lydia's suspect enemies, as detailed in the holograph itself, Aunt Elizabeth, for instance, or Aunt Vidala, resentful of Lydia's power, craving her position, and familiar with both her handwriting and her verbal style, set out to compose this incriminating document, hoping to have it discovered by the eyes?
Line node.
It is remotely possible, but on the whole, I incline to the view that our holograph is authentic. Certainly, it is a fact that someone within Ardua Hall supplied the crucial microdot to the two half-sister fugitives from Gilead, whose journey we will examine next. They themselves claim that this personage was Aunt Lydia. Why not take them at their word? Unless, of course, the girl's story of Aunt Lydia is itself a misdirection, intended to protect the identity of the real Mayday double agent in the case of any treachery stemming from within Mayday. There is always that option. In our profession, one mysterious box, when opened, so often conceals another. This leads us to a pair of documents that are almost certainly authentic. These are labeled as the transactions of witness testimonies from two young women who, from their own accounts, discovered through the bloodline's genealogical archives kept by the aunts that they were half-sisters. The speaker, who identifies herself as Agnes Jemima, purports to have grown up inside Gilead. The one styling herself as Nicole appears to have been some 8 or 9 years younger. In her testimony, she describes how she learned from 2 Mayday agents that she was smuggled out of Gilead as an infant. Nicole might seem too young in years, but also in experience, to have been assigned to the hazardous mission the two of them appear to have carried out so successfully. But she was no younger than many involved in resistance operations and spy work over the course of the centuries. Some historians have even argued that persons of that age are especially suitable for such escapades, as the young are idealistic, have an underdeveloped sense of their own mortality, and are afflicted with an exaggerated thirst for justice. I would say that's not untrue, really. And some of the things that I was seeing from the stories that we learned about while I was in Ireland, a lot of those kids, were very young. A lot of the kids that died, we're talking about from 11 years on till in your 50s and 60s, but a lot of them were from 11 to their early 20s. That's scary, but that's a lot of, they specifically said that a lot of the people that were involved were very young. And I do remember being a lot more idealistic and really having this exaggerated sense of justice and things like that when I was young, and just being more willing to stick my neck out. And maybe I'm a little too willing to stick my neck out at this point too, according to some, but even more so then. The mission described is thought to have been instrumental in initiating the final collapse of Gilead, since the material smuggled out by the younger sister, a microdot embedded in a scarified tattoo, which I must say is a novel method of the information delivery, laughter again, revealed a great many discreditable personal secrets pertaining to various high-level officials. Especially noteworthy is a handful of plots devised by the commanders to eliminate other commanders. Excuse me. The release of this information touched off the so-called ball purge that thinned the ranks of the elite class, weakened the regime, and instigated a military putsch. I think it might be Putsk. I don't know, though. As well as a popular revolt. The civil strife and chaos that resulted enabled a campaign of sabotage coordinated by the Mayday resistance and a series of successful attacks from within certain parts of the former United States, such as the Missouri Hill Country, the areas in and around Chicago and Detroit, Utah, resentful of the massacres of Mormons that had taken place there. The Republic of Texas, Alaska, and most parts of the West Coast. But that is another story, one that is still being pieced together by military historians. My focus will be on the witness testimonies themselves, recorded and transcribed, most likely for the use of the May Day resistance movement. The documents were located in the library of the Innu University in Shashatchu, Labrador. No one had discovered them earlier, possibly because the file was not labeled clearly, being entitled Annals of the Nellie J. Banks, Two Adventurers. Anyone glancing at the group of signifiers would have thought this was an account of an ancient liquor smuggling, the Nellie J. Banks having been a famous rum-running schooner of the early 20th century. It was not until Maya South, one of our graduate students in search of a thesis topic, opened the file that the true nature of its contents became apparent. When she passed the material along to me for evaluation, I was very excited by it, since first-hand narratives from Gilead are vanishingly rare, especially any concerning the lives of girls and women. It is hard for those deprived of literacy to leave such records. But we historians have learned to interrogate our own first assumptions. Was this double-bladed narrative a clever fake? A team of our graduate students set out to follow the route described by the supposed witnesses, first plotting their probable course on maps, both terrestrial and marine, and then traveling this route themselves in hopes of uncovering any extant clues. Maddeningly, the texts themselves are not dated. I trust that if you yourself are ever involved in an escape such as this, you will be more helpful to future historians and will include the month and the year. So he did a lot of this kind of stuff in the last one where he's like kind of chiding the author of the documents that they got for not providing information that would make his job easier. And it's like, these people aren't making this information for you. They're making information so that it is available at some point to somebody, hopefully. And they're not going to be thinking about all the ways that it might help academia to provide certain information. And top that off, they're doing it in secret. If they're caught, they're most likely dead. Okay. After a number of dead ends and a rat-plagued night spent in a derelict lobster canning factory in New Hampshire, the team interviewed an elderly woman residing here in Passamaquoddy. She said her great-grandfather told a story about transporting people to Canada, mostly women, on a fishing boat. He'd even kept a map of the area, and that the great-granddaughter gifted to us, saying she was about to throw out that old junk so no one would have to tidy it up after she was dead. I'll just bring up a slide of this map. Using the laser pointer, I will now trace the most likely route taken by our two young refugees. By car to here, by bus to here, by pickup truck to here, and by motorboat to here, and then on the Nellie J. Banks to this beach near Huberville, Nova Scotia, from where they appear to have been airlifted to a refugee processing and medical center on Campobello Island, New Brunswick. Our team of students next visited Campobello Island, and on it, the summer home built by the family of Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 19th century, within which the refugee center was temporarily located. Gilead wished to sever any ties with its edifice and blew up the causeway from the Gilead mainland to prevent any land-based escapes by those hankering after more democratic ways. The house went through some rough times in those days, but has since been restored and is run as a museum. Regrettably, much of the original furniture has vanished. Our two young women may have spent at least a week in this house, as by their own accounts, both were in need of treatment for hypothermia and exposure, and in the case of the younger sister, for sepsis due to an infection. Well, I wonder why that might have been. While searching the building, our enterprising young team discovered some intriguing incisions in the woodwork of a second-story windowsill. Here they are on this slide, painted over but still visible. This is an N for Nicole, perhaps. You can trace the upstroke here, and an A and a G. Could these refer to Ada and Garth? Or does the A point to Agnes? There is a V for Victoria? Slightly below it, over here, the letters AL, referring possibly to the Aunt Lydia of their testimonies. Who was the mother of these two half-sisters? We know there was a fugitive handmaid who was an active field agent with Mayday for some years. After surviving at least 2 assassination attempts, she worked for some years under triple protection at their intelligence unit near Barrie, Ontario, which posed as an organic hemp products farm. We have not definitively excluded this individual as the author of the Handmaid's Tale tapes found in the footlocker, and according to the narratives, this individual had at least 2 children. But jumping to conclusions can lead us astray, so I depend on future scholars to examine them more closely, if possible. For the use of interested parties, at the moment an opportunity available only to symposium attendees, though, depending on funding, we hope to extend it for the benefit of a broader readership. My colleague, Professor Notley Wade, and I have prepared a facsimile edition of these 3 batches of materials, which have interleaved in an order that made approximate narrative sense to us. You could take the historian out of the storyteller, but you can't take the storyteller out of the historian. Laughter and applause. Ah. We have numbered the sections to aid in our searches and references. Needless to say, no such numbers appear on the originals. Copies of the facsimile may be requested at the registration desk. No more than 1 each, please, as supplies are limited. Travel well on your journey into the past, and while you are there, ponder the meaning of the cryptic windowsill markings. I will confine myself to suggesting that the correspondence of the initial letters to several key names in our transcripts is highly evocative, to say the least. All right, a little more water. I will conclude with one more fascinating piece of the puzzle. The group of slides I am about to show you portrays a statue located at present on the Boston Common. Its provenance suggests it is not from the Gilead period. The name of the sculptor corresponds to that of an artist who was active in Montreal some decades after the collapse of Gilead, and the statue must have been transferred to its present position some years after the post-Gilead chaos and subsequent restoration of the United States of America. Yay, the restoration of the U.S., which, wow, like the fact that they would have to restore it. But, I mean, look at the way shit's going now. Although Donald Trump seems to want to make every other country part of the U.S. rather than tearing down the U.S. to be something else. But then again, just because it's still named the U.S. doesn't mean a damn thing when you keep destroying our democratic regulations and the legal precedents that we have in our country. Anyway. The inscription would appear to name the principal actors cited in our materials. If this is so, our two young messengers must indeed have lived not only to tell their tale, but also to be reunited with their mother and their respective fathers, and to have children and grandchildren of their own. Now, spoiler for the TV show if you haven't watched it, but one of the fathers on here has been killed off on the TV show on the very last episode. Had to just get that out. But on here, he has not. We some of us fans had been providing some conjecture that what if, when they killed him off, he actually, like, him and Lawrence actually escaped the plane with a fucking parachute or something, like parachuted out of there just in the nick of time. I was just like, yeah, he could just claim he's going to the restroom, like the front restroom, and while he's over there, freaking get a parachute out and fucking escape out of there. But it's not likely to happen. It's just good fun trying to think of ideas that we could have for them to not actually die, even though it looks like they probably are definitely dead. Anyway, let's see. Where was I? I have lost my place. Okay. I myself take this inscription to be a convincing testament to the authenticity of our two witness transcripts. The collective memory is notoriously faulty, and much of the past sinks into the ocean of time to be drowned forever. But once in a while, the waters part, allowing us to glimpse a flash of hidden treasure, if only for a moment. Although history is rife with nuance, and we historians can never hope for a unanimous agreement, I trust you will be able to concur with me, at least in this instance. As you can see, the statue depicts a young woman wearing the costume of the Pearl Girls. Note the definitive cap, the strand of pearls, and the backpack. She is carrying a bouquet of small flowers, identified by our ethnobotanist consultant as forget-me-nots. On her right shoulder, there are two birds belonging, it would seem, to the pigeon or dove family. Here is the inscription. The lettering is weathered and difficult to read on the slide. So I took the liberty of transcribing it on the following slide here. And on this last note, I will close. They gotta make me cry a little bit. In loving memory of Becca, Aunt Immortelle. This memorial was erected by her sisters Agnes and Nicole, and their mother, their two fathers, their children, and their grandchildren, and in recognition of the invaluable services provided by A.L. Aunt Lydia. Okay, alright. Not crying too much, just a little bit. The bird of the air carry the voice, and that which hath wings shall tell the matter. Love is as strong as death. Okay. Alright, y'all. It's time for the acknowledgments. That will be the very, very end. Let me get a little bit more water. Acknowledgments. The Testaments was written in many places. In the dome car of a train struck on a siding due to a mudslide, on a couple of ships, in a number of hotel rooms, in the middle of a forest, in the center of a city, on park benches and in cafes, with words inscribed on the proverbial paper napkin, in notebooks and on a laptop. The mudslide was beyond my control, as were some of the other events affecting the writing venues. Others were entirely my own fault. But before the actual placing of words on pages, the Testaments was written partly in the minds of the readers of its predecessor, The Handmaid's Tale, who kept asking what happened after the end of the novel. 35 years is a long time to think about possible answers, and the answers have changed as society itself has changed, and as possibilities have become actualities. The citizens of many countries, including the United States, are under more stresses now than they were 3 decades ago. One question about The Handmaid's Tale that came up repeatedly is, how did Gilead fall? The Testaments was written in response to this question. Totalitarianism may crumble from within as they fail to keep the promises that brought them to power. Or they may be attacked from without, or both. There are no surefire formulas, since very little in history is inevitable. My thanks first to the readers of The Handmaid's Tale. Their interest and curiosity has been inspiring. And many thanks to the large team who brought the book to life as a gripping, beautifully made, and award-winning MGM and Hulu television series. Steve Stark, Warren Littlefield, and Daniel Wilson on the producing end. Showrunner Bruce Miller and his excellent writing room, the fine directors, and the amazing cast for whom this was definitely not just another show. Elizabeth Moss, Ann Dowd, Samira Wiley, Joseph Fiennes, I think that's Fiennes, maybe, Yvonne Strahovski, Alexis Bledel, Amanda Brugel, I'm not sure, Max Minghella, and so many others. The television series has respected one of the axioms of the novel. No event is allowed into it that does not have a precedent in human history. So this is the author telling you right now that every single event in her book that she wrote came from some sort of precedent in actual human history. It is a fictional story, but it is based on real life fucked up shit that happens in the real world. Every published book is a group effort. So many thanks are due to the wild posse of editors and first readers on the both sides of the Atlantic who have helped with this thought experiment in countless ways. From I love that to you can't get away with this and I don't understand, tell me more. This group includes, but is not limited to, Becky Hardy of Chatto Penguin Random House, UK, Louise Denny's and Martha Kenya Forstner of Penguin Random House Canada, Nan Talese and Luann Walther of the Pandem Random House US, Jess Atwood Gibson, who is ruthless, and Heather Sangster of Strong Finish. The demon copy editor who picks every nit, including those yet unhatched. And thanks to the proofreading and production teams led by Lydia Beckler, I'm not sure, and Lorraine Highland at Penguin Random House US, and Kimberly Hesses at Penguin Random House Canada. Thanks also to Todd Dowdy and Suzanne Hertz of Penguin Random House US, and Jared Bland and Ashley Dunn of Penguin Random House Canada, and to Fran Owen, Mary Yamazaki, and Chloe Healy of Penguin Random House UK. To my now retired agents, Phoebe Larmore and Vivian Schuster, to Carolina Sutton, and to Caitlin Layden, Claire Nozieris, Sophie Baker, and Jody Fabry of Curtis Brown, to Alex Fain, David Sabel, and the team at Fain Productions, and to Ron Bernstein of ICM. In the Special Services Department, to Scott Griffin for sailing advice, to Oberon Zell Ravenhart and Kristen Johnson, to Mia South, whose name appears in the text as a result of an auction in aid of the charity Freedom from Torture, and to the several Second World War resistance members from France, Poland, and the Netherlands, whom I have known over the years. The character Ada was named for my aunt by marriage, Ada Bauer Atwood Brannan, who was one of the first female hunting and fishing guides in Nova Scotia. To those who keep me trundling through time and who remind me what day it is, including Lucia Chino of OW, Toad Limited, and Penny Kavanaugh, to VJ Bauer, who designs and tends the website, to Ruth Atwood and Ralph Sifford, to Evelyn Heskin, and to Mike Stoyan and Sheldon Shoib, to Donald Bennett, to Bob Clark and Dave Cole, to Colleen Quinn, who makes sure I get out of the writing burrow and onto the open road, to Zalin Zhao and Vicky Dong, to Matthew Gibson, who fixes stuff, and to Terry Kerman and the Shock Doctors for keeping the lights on, and as always, to Graham Gibson, my partner in many strange and wonderful adventures for almost 50 years. The end. That's it. Like, there is other stuff. Do I want to read this? Vintage Home to the World's Greatest Authors and Books, where new writers are discovered, best-selling books are found, and yesterday's classics revive for a new generation of readers. Our authors represent the very best in creativity and quality and have won the most prestigious prizes the book world has to offer, including the Man Booker, the Samuel Johnson, and the Nobel. Born in New York in 1974 and arriving in London in 1990, Vintage publishes beautiful books with the very best design for people to love and to read. All right. And then this is a whole bunch of names. I'm not sure the exact purpose, but a whole bunch of names. They're, I believe, all in alphabetical order, and I'm not going to read them all. And then you have your copyright information, which I am wondering, what is the copyright on this is 2019.
Power it off.
I'm wondering about the fact that I found it free, because it is definitely not old enough to have fallen out of copyright. And I don't think it has a Creative Commons copyright on it, but it might. I don't know. I am thinking about looking up some more like books that are Creative Commons where you can read them without worry about copyright or whatever, so long as you give credit or something like that, or some of the ones that are older and have fallen out of the copyright dates. But right now, I'm thinking I will start on this book, Princesses Behaving Badly, and then I'll figure something out from there. I do have this book that I started to read, Edith Hamilton, Mythology, Timeless Tales of Gods and Heroes. But I've only read a little bit of it, and I'm not sure that it's going to be all that engaging reading material. So I don't want to subject my viewers to unengaging reading material. So we'll leave that out unless later on I find it a little more riveting. But so far, not so much. I haven't gotten very far in it. But anyway, let's go to the live scene. Anyway, that's it for Margaret Atwood's books for now. There are other Margaret Atwood books. I've read some of them, and some of them I have not read. But I would definitely consider doing more Margaret Atwood stuff. I'm considering doing some George R.R. Martin stuff. But I would have to get actual books. Right now I have audio books of a lot of that stuff. I think I do have some like electronic book copies of certain books. I'd have to go into my stash, my my Amazon and my what are they called, Kindle and stuff like that. I have I think 3 or 4 book accounts that I have digital books on that I could look through and try to pick some stuff out. But for right now, I think I'll do the Princesses Behaving Badly one next. I don't know exactly when. And I am as I said at the beginning of this, I have been on vacation in Ireland. I was there for 2.5 weeks, and I am back now, obviously. I had considered doing some of my live streams of certain things in Ireland, but most of the TV shows I watch, I could not watch while I was out there. Like, I had access to Netflix sometimes, and I had access to various British and Irish programs and channels and stuff, but a lot of it was based on internet connection, and the internet connection in some places was pretty decent, but in some places it was pretty bad. And I think there was a couple places where after a certain time it got really bad. Like, it was perfectly fine during the day, but then after a certain time it just, like, stuff would just not play, or it would play a little bit and then it would pause, and and have that scrolling wheel, that loading wheel going. So that wasn't gonna cut it. But yeah, I got House of the Dragon breakdown coming this evening. I don't know what time yet. That's the only reason I didn't put it on my post. But at some point this evening, I'm going to be doing the episode 4 breakdown. I have not watched episode 5, and I understand episode 6 is coming. I was hoping I could get episode 4 and 5 done before episode 6 so that I could kind of catch up, but I don't think that's going to happen. I will get episode 4 done. And I think I will be part way done through episode 5 by the time episode 6 comes out. So it will probably take me a couple days before I can get started on episode 6. And I'm really trying to do them one episode at a time. Once I get completely done with episode 4, then I will start on episode 5. I don't want to start them ahead of time because I don't want spoilers, and plus it'll muddle up my mind. I'll end up confusing stuff that happened in one episode from stuff that happened in another episode. So I'd rather just keep it a little bit more clear. And I am, like I said, a little bit under the weather. It's mostly, right now, it's just mostly a little bit of a congestion and a little pressure in my face, but not a whole lot. But I think it still will affect my mental clarity, which is already affected because of hormonal perimenopause crap. So anyway, I know I just keep mumbling on, but it's because I feel like talking, and I haven't done this in a while. What else do I have going on? I'm still airing Night of the Seven Kingdom episodes. I think I have 2 more episodes left of that. And then Tokyo Ghoul Part 2. We're continuing on with those episodes. And I'm not sure what I'm doing after that. I have to check the dates that some of the TV shows that I plan to review or react to actually come out. Because I know there's a couple that are coming out eventually. I just don't know the exact dates. It seems like the TV show runners have been waiting till pretty close to when things come out to actually tell us the exact dates that they're going to release them. And they're like telling us what year they come out, or they'll tell us what season they might come out, but they wait until like a month or so before things come out to tell us a more precise date, which makes it a little bit challenging to plan these things. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get off of here because I'm really just rambling now. Just like giving all my random thoughts about what's going on with my channel. But that's all I got to say for now. If you want to watch my House of the Dragon breakdown of episode 4, that will come on later on tonight. I'm not sure exactly what time, but it will be sometime tonight. And then I will get to episode 5 after that. And it depends on how long that takes me to get that done before I put that breakdown up. So we'll see. That's all I got for you for now. Bye.